Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. This is Will from the Hypermode team. And today we have also Ryan from the Hypermode team. Hey Ryan.
Hey there. Great to be here.
Great. Well, today we're going to show some cool new features that we're working on at Hypermode. Definitely like to keep this as interactive as possible. So feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat, and we'll definitely take a look at those. And if you have any feedback, also great just to hear from folks. And I always like to ask if folks want to share where they're joining from, just to make sure we can see the chat and the chat is working. But otherwise, yeah, great to see everyone. And over to Ryan to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Super excited to be with everyone today and share a little bit about what we're working on at Hypermode and a new experience that we're building for working with agents. But before we dive into the actual product demo, I think it's always really helpful to ground on how we think about agents here at Hypermode and why we think a lot of people may be approaching it in an incremental way that's holding back the capabilities of that. Right. So I always like to say that we're not a new agent framework, right? We do have one of those, but we really think about Hypermode as a new framework for working with agents, right? And helping people start to build intuition about what they're good at, what they struggle with, and how to help them develop, just like you would another member of your team. Because at the end of the day, this is your new team, right? It is going to look very different. And it's going to be a new experience for everyone, right? To figure out how do we harness these agents and put them to work. If we do it well, they take on the mundane, repetitive work, but they do it differently, right? They don't think in structured instructions the same way that they do with prompts, right? Or insights and giving them tools and orienting them to the goal. So when we think about that, like I like to contrast how a user would define a workflow versus how an agent may define it, right? And I think in the market, there's some confusion around how to apply AI to these workflows, right? So if I think about as a DevOps engineer, if I wanted to go optimize our build pipelines because they're really slow and try to figure out what's going on with them, I would log into the build system. I would go fetch those logs. I would look at warnings, maybe do some research on those, identify slow steps, research those optimizations, right? Open issues, and that's just to get to the backlog. The work hasn't even been done yet. And oftentimes, say if you look around the market, you'll see this, right? You'll see AI vendors looking to add AI to each individual step. And sure, that makes it incrementally better, right? You can start to say, okay, now I don't have to go identify those warnings. AI is going to do that for me. But the real power of agents is when you rethink about the goal, right? When you go to this is how an agent would look at that. Is my builds are running slow. Can you review the latest logs and propose improvements to help speed them up? And this is what we really want to help people do at Hypermode is think through these things differently, right? So when you think about the difference between a workflow and an agent, you're going from fixed sequences to sets of skills and dynamic reasoning instead of rules to get through those, right? It's a different way of working through those things, but quite powerful if you really adopt its capabilities. It also means going from proprietary steps, right? It's not about a bunch of closed connectors. The model context protocol is really leading the way around open tooling and that you can make those available to your agent in ways that you still retain ownership. But then you also layer on memories, right? They go from static to improving, right? If you build a workflow, that's great. It solves that problem. But the second you need to go build a new skill on that, that's a new workflow from scratch with no new underpinning learnings for that. And so just changing the step layer, right, making it a little bit easier to do one step doesn't change the overall problem that we see in the market. And so we really think about this as more than redefining workflows. Agents can be really powerful and they evolve as fast as you iterate if you can do it quickly. And so we built a platform that makes it really easy to iterate with agents. So let me give you an example and walk you through this, and then we'll flip over and do some live views of the actual product, right? So this may be our first agent. Super simple. It can open new issues in GitHub for me. So instead of having to swivel seat over to that, I can just have my agent do that, right? So I think first in the skills, right? The jobs to be done of that agent are about the skills of being able to open a new issue. That's what I want to teach them first. I'm going to give them the latest foundational model. They're going to have a lot of ability to reason through how to accomplish that skill. And this is where MCP comes in, right? So to do that, we manage issues on GitHub. So I'm going to give them access to GitHub, right? Just connecting that in, and I'll show you how that looks in the product. Gives them a lot of new tools that they have access to. And then in this case, we're going to do automated memories from interactions, right? So over time, as I work with this agent day in and day out, they're going to get more advanced, which is really the value prop in my mind of these agents. And so I could come over here and say, open a new issue in the repo to investigate optimizations for our build time, include suggested paths for exploration. And it's going to do that pretty well, right? It's going to call that tool. It's going to open the issue based on its own research and understanding why build times may be slow and different places to explore. And it's going to open this issue for me. And you'll see it opened it as me, right? Agents on our platform operate as you. That's a real strong strength in my mind, because then that means they have access to everything you do and don't have access to the things you don't, right? So it becomes really safe to give these agents access to your tools because they're operating as you, and that's completely traceable. But the part that really changes when you think about an agent versus a workflow is that when I want to go teach it a new skill, when I want to say, cool, I actually want to teach you how to optimize those builds, you don't need to actually bring that back and say, okay, how do I start to build it from scratch? I'm just going to add a new MCP server, right? I'm going to add Vercel's MCP server. Vercel is where we have our builds and our front-end development, and so it can actually read through those. So when we go back, we see Cruz here. We've added Vercel to his connections. And now we say, my builds are running slow. Can you review the latest logs and propose improvements to speed them up? It asks some questions. We see that as a positive, right? I think oftentimes people will get started and they see and say, oh, well, didn't get it right the first time. I didn't know this. That's okay, as long as it gets better over time, right? If I just went to an intern and said, my builds are running slow, can you review the latest logs and propose improvements to speed them up? They're going to ask some follow-up questions. That's a healthy part of this process. And we'll talk about where we see that going from there. But what it'll do, it'll go fetch those logs, it'll read through them. And I missed that part. It'll say, static page generation and type checking are likely bottlenecks in your build based on how long it's taking. And so we want to go fix that. We say open an issue for each, and then let's work on a PR to optimize it, right? It really is that simple of kind of curating with it. But the real thing that I start to think about is how this changes is the ability to say, okay, I just taught you something. From this, you want to extract memories, you want to extract repeatable actions. And that's how we start to automate that skill, right? So you can't ask an agent to say, can you do this every week? But what you can do is turn that into a one-shot prompt, a one-shot action that then you can hook up to a schedule and say, hey, I want you to look at this every week. People aren't reacting to our build logs until they have errors or they're too slow and it's grinding everything to a halt. I want you to make us better by reviewing these every week and identify improvements. And over time, you're going to link that together and start to make that more powerful. But to get started, this just becomes a really easy way to offload some of that work. And that's how we think about the life cycle of this, right? You start first by defining your agent. You start to work with them. You train them how to do things. And when you find skills that are repeatable, you extract those skills and schedule or connect them to webhooks to integrate them into the rest of your environment. So let's jump over to a live demo. So to set the stage here, we're going to live build a product marketing agent. We're going to teach it how to answer product questions and generate marketing copy. And if those are the things we want it to do, we're going to make sure that it has access to the latest reasoning model as well as Ref, which is a documentation indexing platform, and GitHub MCP server. So it has the tools that it needs to do that job.
Ryan, before we jump into the live demo part, one thing that I think folks often wonder about here and try to get like the mental model right as we're thinking about what we're seeing here. Like you talked about MCP, model context protocol, a little bit, and how that enables the agent to interact with, say, like GitHub or other ways of interacting with like Vercel, like different APIs. Where exactly does that MCP server live? Is that something that like GitHub and Vercel are providing, like an API? Like what actually is MCP in this architecture?
Yeah, the short answer is it depends, right? This is a place that the industry overall is kind of working through. If you look at some providers like a Linear or a Neon, they're hosted MCP server as part of their service. If you look at GitHub, they require you to host it, right? And so in the architecture, it can be different in different places, and there's some pros and cons to different parts, and I think that will sort itself out over time. When you build with Hypermode, we take care of that for you, and we take care of the authentication handshake for you. so that you can just think about this as adding a connection, right? Under the hood, it's MCP, but for you, it's as simple as OAuthing into a tool.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's something that I think is changing by the week right now as this kind of distributed architecture starts to settle into place. So why don't we jump over and we're going to build our product marketing agent. And first, I'll orient you to threads, right? This is our workbench for building with agents. You see our domain-specific agents on the left, a history of the threads, and some other things that will be coming later, really around the ability to inbox and task, right? That is asynchronous pieces, right? So if I schedule something, I wanted to be able to monitor it in my tasks. I want to be able to actually have it reach back out to me when it needs help, right? But today we're going to focus on the core threads experience and how to build our product marketing agent. So I'm going to go create a new agent, and I'm going to name her Tabitha. This is our product marketer. I think when it's just getting started with agents, it's easy to think about them as roles that you have in your company or that you wish you had, right? And so you can start to build these agentically. For description, this will go in our catalog. It's like, I know our product inside and out. And then I'm going to give it a prompt, right? And so that prompt is pretty simple. It's, you're a principal product marketer for Hypermode, the AI development platform that helps you launch a team of agents in hours, help your team know the product and its value better than anyone else. We're going to point it towards ref search for answering questions about Hypermode. And if they're unsure, if I just use a general term, assume it's a Hypermode specific term. And one of the powerful parts about this is that I can actually change which model it is, right? So in this case, we're going to use GPT-4.1, but you could try Llama or Gemini or Claude, right? See what works best for your agent. And as new models come out, you can make those changes pretty easily, right? So there's Tabitha. She is here and ready to help us. So I'm going to dive in real quick to look at her card here and make sure that she has access to the tools that she needs. So we talked about Ref and GitHub, because our website's on GitHub. And so I want to make sure that she can actually make those updates for us. So if I go and start a new thread with Tabitha, second. There we go. There's Tabitha. And we're going to first start with my check. What tools do you have access to? And she's going to inventory those MCP servers and understand what tools are available to her and summarize it back for us and let us know that if all works well, and it's always fun in non-deterministic systems to do demos, but here we go. She has access to ref search to understand Hypermode's product knowledge. She has a web search under the hood that we include and GitHub, right? So she can help us do a lot of things here. So now let's start a new thread with Tabitha. And imagine that we are a sales rep who's on a call live with someone and said, oh, Hypermode just launched a model router. Does it support Claude 3.7? And so I can say, does model router support Claude 3.7? Now, if you ask ChatGPT this, one, it would know model router was Hypermodes, right? We gave it the hint in the prompt to assume it's Hypermodes. But if you asked about 3.7, it would say, no, it couldn't possibly. Like Anthropic hasn't released Claude 3.7 yet because its information is old, right? And so the ability to use tools to bring real-time information in is what makes these agents powerful. So when we hit enter here, again, if all goes as planned, we will see it say, of course it does, right? I used ref search to understand Hypermode's current capabilities. Here we go. I did the search and it supports Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And here's the slug that we can use to use it. Great. So it knows our product and it's able to answer questions that a raw GPT would not be able to do so. But let's do something a little bit more advanced. Let's say it's time to update our homepage headline to incorporate the launch of model router. Can you review the current homepage at hypermode.com and propose 3 new options, one each, focusing on pain, opportunity, and surprise for updated headlines. And so it's as simple as that, right? Tabitha is going to go out and search our current homepage, understand what the current positioning is, and start to create new opportunities here, right? Stop juggling model APIs. They're a little long, so say I like the second one, but shorten it up to be less than 10 words. Even that's a little long, but we'll make it work here. Cool. There we go. That's it. Now search for the current headline in GitHub to find the source and open a PR to make your update. And so what you'll see here, if all goes planned, is a sequence of tool calls to actually iteratively reason about how to get this task done.
And Ryan, could you say a little bit about that sort of planning phase, right? So you give a sort of task to the agent. In the previous example, it knew to use the web search tool, and so obviously there's some sort of reasoning, and for these more complex ones where it's a chain of tool calls, like how is the agent reasoning about that? Is it just that it knows what connections are available, what tools are available, and it's as simple as that? Or how does that work essentially?
Exactly. So I think there's a few things that are at play here, right? Most of this is powered by the reasoning model, but its ability to reason through this is largely driven by its understanding of its role, right? So giving it a domain specific orientation, right? In this case, a product marketer helps it narrow down and to understand how a product marketer would operate. So that creates some repetition and understanding around that reasoning loop. And then there's the tools, right? How the tools describe themselves makes them available to the model to understand how to reach for those and how to work through that process. You see here, it actually got stuck a little bit, right? It's trying to search for it. It's really struggling. It had misplaced what the current headline was, right? So let's help it out a little bit. And this is okay, right? These models will get better over time. This is our current headline. It got confused by this little part up here. So we're going to switch back and say, the current headline is this, search for that, and then make the PR. But this is where you start to see the reasoning, right? It didn't just try to search once and see that it failed. It searched multiple times in different areas, different pagination, tried to go to our doc search, right? Like it really tried to go figure out how to solve this before coming back to me saying, I need help. And you can tune all of that in the system prompt. You can kind of give it some guidance around how much you want it to go fight for the answer versus coming back and asking for help sooner to balance that consumption. And so now she's working through it. Let's see how this one plays out. And I'll say while she's working through this, like our goal here is not to make sure that every one of these is perfect, right? The nudges, the tuning, the interaction model is, to me, actually the key value prop of threads is learning how to work with them. At the end, we'll extract this into a prompt that we can then make repetitive. But for right now, this is about getting to the outcome, right? So it found that search, it pulled the file, created a branch, got the contents, and updated the file, right? And so it found the right location. It ran into, there's already a branch name that. Try a variation on the branch name. And again, these things will get better over time because they'll start to understand how to work around some of these impediments in front of them. But this is no different. I think about a lot as interns, right? When they first get started, they don't know how to think about some of these impediments and how to work through them. And so you're just giving them nudges and guidance. And over time, as long as your agents are remembering those things in memory and getting better, then you're going to get to really powerful agents over time. Here we go. So I don't think with the screen share, it's going to render here because it's just sharing the one tab. But let me just see if I can get that working real quick on this. So here we go. Now you can see that this headline was updated and Tabitha was able to do that. And you'll see, I'm not able to approve it. This opened as me again, right? So this is operating as me. It's not working around our organizational controls. It really is a powerful accelerant within them. And so if that can get reviewed and approved, and then that'll be live on our site. And it's as simple as that to start to build an agent, right? I think that's really the powerful part of what we're doing here.
So
The one other
for
thing,
folks,
yeah,
go,
just
go ahead.
real quick, Will. The one other thing to highlight here, right, is like you start to work through these agents, and at some point you're going to find when you're like, I want to embed this into my own product, right? It's cool as a productivity tool. It's even better when I can expose it to my users. One of the things we're really proud of is the ability to export any of these agents to code, right? So these export to Modus apps. Modus is an open source agent runtime that we lead, and you have that ability to then scale that out. It runs on WebAssembly. It's super performant, and it's designed for really intense production environments. So you're not going to have these agents that you build and now I'm stuck. And I was like, how do I actually make this useful for my business? It becomes really easy there.
For folks that may have used, tools like Cursor or Windsurf, where you're sort of in an IDE and you're using an agent to help you write code, this is a bit of a different experience, right? It seems like you have access to maybe like a higher level group of tools and this sort of thing. But how would you compare like this experience to working in an IDE with sort of code assistance like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be an opportunity for agents that are in line into an experience like an IDE. And that's great, right? It's helping you write code. It's really, its specialty is enriching that experience. And I think that's going to become more in line and less of a chat experience over time. I think there's a different world when you're trying to integrate all of these systems, right? And where you need this platform or workbench to figure out how do I incorporate my organization's proprietary data with some of these other tools and how to bring those together. And so I think coding assistants are fantastic. They should absolutely improve the productivity of engineers. But there's a lot of other domain-specific agents we built, and I don't think you want a platform for each one of those independently as much as being able to have one place where you can actually interact with all of these.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was working on sort of a social media intern agent project earlier where I wanted to have access to GitHub and Notion to be able to kind of prepare content for me, and that was really useful to be able to access to lots of those different tools. But then also, I may be doing like more advanced sort of updating code and this sort of thing. So it makes a lot of sense, this idea of having domain specific agents rather than sort of being locked into like, oh, I'm in my IDE environment. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this is really what it comes down to for us, right? We built this experience. We're super excited about it. We've started onboarding our first users. So if you're on the wait list, your time is coming very soon. But it's really about defining the skill, add tools, and start to work with the agents to build intuition, right? Your intuition of how to work with them, their intuition of what you expect. And as long as you have the possibility of iterating every day, you're gonna get to some pretty advanced use cases pretty quickly. So that's what I had for today. Happy to answer any questions if they're there. Also, feel free to reach out. Like we're super excited to talk about any use cases that people may have out of the gate.
Great, good stuff. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event and sharing what you're working on with Hypermode.
Awesome.
So
Thanks,
thanks a lot,
everyone.
folks.